morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody watching this webinar. And for all of you who are watching live, thank you so much for joining. This is webinar one of what we like to call at eduMates, the Thought Leader Experience Series. My name is Arpit Bhaskarwar, the co-founder and COO of eduMates, and I'm going to be the host for you all this evening. For our first guest, we have someone who never backs down when it comes to making a positive impact in society. He has led a successful NGO and also hosted the third biggest Model United Nations in Pune. Please help me welcome Shaunak Kulkarni. Shaunak, thank you so much for joining.
So I'm originally born in California, but I moved to Pune when I was around 7 years old and lived there for 10 years before coming to college in the United States. And while in Pune, I definitely had a fair share of experience with entrepreneurship, very rewarding, met some of the most important people to me ever in my life, met some of the best people I've ever worked with. And got involved with and tried my hand at a lot of different ventures. And I'm excited to be here and excited to talk to you about them.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Shaunak. That was perfect. So diving right into the whole journey of getting into Wharton, one of the biggest business schools in the world. Tell us about that whole journey. How was that?
I think, so obviously this happened when I was around 10th, 11th and 12th grade. That was the entire preparatory phase. It was definitely not tough, but it was a challenging journey, right? There are a lot of aspects to the admissions process in the United States. It's not as simple as India, where you have a test, and if you clear the test with this much rank, you get into this college, right? There's a lot of moving parts in the American process. You have your standardized testing, you have your school grades, you have your essays, you have your extracurriculars, a lot of parts. So I think it was around sometime in 10th or 11th standard that I was I want to go to the US and study. And at the time I was obviously a lot of the parents of people here, my parents wanted me to do engineering, and they were I'd go to Orchid, do Bakliwal, try your hand at JE, blah, blah, blah. And I was sure, okay, I'll try it out. But then I knew that I always wanted to do not so much of engineering or sciencey stuff, but more so businessy, entrepreneurship, management, that kind of stuff was what really made me. So that's I think 11th grade, I was okay, Wharton is where I want to go. And obviously there are a few other options that I thought of, and then on the way, I think 11th and 12th standard, obviously for the journey, I gave my SATs, I made sure I was doing well academically in school. And then I think I really stepped up my involvement outside just school and the commitments I have over there to entrepreneurship or model UN or debate or sports. I try to make sure basically the extracurricular bucket of my application was up to date and doing well. So it was definitely challenging because you don't just do activities for the sake of putting it on your resume or application. You do them because you actually care about them, and you they will be good activities, and they will actually make an impact in your application if you're actually serious about them and not just doing them to put them on you. So I made sure I was trying to all my new ventures, I would think through whatever I wanted to do, and I had a great time doing that. And obviously towards the end, it was all about the essay writing and the letters of recommendation. I spent a few months on just making sure those were perfect. And luckily enough, it all paid off. And it's crazy to think that 5 years ago I was in the whole application phase, and now I'm graduating from my dream school. So it was a good process.
Absolutely, that's great. So you mentioned obviously the process of getting into a university abroad, maybe in the US, is quite different to getting into a university in India. What age do you think people should start maybe thinking about this, start working towards their CV, getting involved in other external activities? What do you think about that?
So for the US, I think so basically American colleges are going to look at your high school record, right? 9, 10th, 11th.
Right.
So I think when you should start thinking about it is 9th or 10th grade, I think, in my opinion. That's when you should really start thinking that, okay, if I want to go to college, is what do I want to do? What or even beyond just the perspective of getting me into college, but in general, what can I do that I enjoy, and what can I do that will make an impact in the lives of people around me or my community. so at least getting that thought process kicked off by like 9th or 10th grade is important, and then executing mainly over 11th, 12th, and also a bit of 10th, honestly, is like ideal.
Okay, great stuff. So Shaunak, how big of a difference did Wharton make in your life? How big was that?
Oh, I think massive, right? I think like I'm not the person I was 4 years ago, and I think like in general, I think it's not just a Wharton thing, but it's a college thing. Like college, obviously, exposes you to new people. College exposes you to new experiences, and college, like for example, like as I said, I'm doing investment banking after graduation. Like 4 years ago, I didn't know what investment banking meant at all. I think like I understood it just because like it's like a very popular career option for like kids who graduate from Wharton. So I think in that kind of sense, like professionally, Wharton definitely like put me on a certain career path that I would not have had if I probably went to another school or like another college. That being said, like if you go to another school, another college, you are going to be put on a different path. It's just not probably the same one like Ben would put you on, like in terms of industry and what you're involved in. And obviously, the people I've met some really smart, like really incredible people all around like college and like even in like the Philadelphia community. That's been like really great for me. And personality wise as well, I think like I've changed a lot. Like I've definitely become like humbler. I think studying 4 years in the college and like at a school like Penn like really makes you like way more humble. I've become humbler, like, and just in general, like definitely I see my personality to have like changed a lot like over the past 4 years. A variety of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Shaunak. And I think we at eduMates, we are trying to curb that problem of when when students are going abroad for universities, it's not physically possible for them all the time to go so many miles across and see the campus and see if they're the right fit. We at eduMates are giving that platform to students, where they can talk to current students and talk to students like you, ask questions about maybe your course and stuff like that. And I think you're the best person to, guide them, saying that, okay, this is the perfect fit for you, because I think university, as you mentioned, is a life-changing decision. So
it's great. No, for sure. I think like, as I said earlier, like your school will have a big role in like what path it pushes you on, like career wise or like what you want to do. And I think like, like for example, like I would have like loved to have had a conversation with someone like Wharton before coming here to understand like the whole like banking and consulting push, but I didn't have that. I think like it's definitely like a good thing that you guys are trying to do.
Great, thank you so much, Shaunak. So moving on, quick question, top thing on your bucket list right now.
Dude, I want to travel, man. I want to meet people. That's like the biggest thing on my bucket list. Obviously, like can't do any of that right now. Waiting for the world to change,
Absolutely.
But I would love to, like travel, get one, like meet all my friends. Like it's just been it's been a long and lonely time.
Oh my God, I totally agree with you. That's great. Great. So diving right into the whole topic of the webinar. So what do you think entrepreneurship is for you? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, so I think like for me, like when I think about entrepreneurship, right, it boils down to one phrase. And like as I said this earlier, like I think in the video to you, but like it boils down to like one phrase: value creation, right? Like whenever you're like basically creating any form of value, right? That's entrepreneurship. Now the question is, what is value, right? But I think value, like it's a very fluid definition. It's a very like for example, like I can argue that if I put a smile on your face right now, I'm an entrepreneur, right? It sounds pretty ridiculous, but like that's what I believe it is. It's creating value out of nothing. And like obviously the most common ways we think about value is like financial value. Like if I'm generating money or profits, I'm an entrepreneur. Or like social value, if I'm like creating some value in society, if I'm giving people employment, if I'm like blah blah blah, like that's one branch of value. But like in general, I think if you're like it all boils down to like that same phrase, which is value creation.
Right, absolutely. I personally have been very interested, talking to entrepreneurs like you and understanding how you think. So if I had to put that in the question, I would say, what is the biggest problem you're passionate to solve? Even if it takes a significant span of your lifetime.
Interesting. what is the biggest problem I want to solve? Honestly, I haven't given that question much thought in life.
Yeah.
But in general, I think one of the things that I'm like thinking about, and I'm very excited, like in the economy in general, is like a phrase called, the sharing economy, which is which basically means that, like traditionally business has been very like, let's make more stuff, let's sell more stuff, that's how we make our business. But over the past few years, and like this is something like I'm passionate about, is that like we've made enough stuff, like we've built enough stuff. There's obviously room to like innovate and build better things, but I think in terms of just like a pure mass production, like we have a lot of stuff. How do we share that stuff, right? And like the most basic way to think about that is like Airbnb, right? Uber, like all these kind of companies that operate in the sharing economy, their thesis is that, we have this stuff, let's just like rent that out and make use of that same stuff. So I think like that's like a interesting problem, like not just a problem, but like interesting like kind of challenge in the world that, like what are the, like how can we share more and how can we create value from sharing more? And I think like that in general has been like a space that I'm like interested in and I've always been interested in. And yeah, that's like, if like, for example, if I had to like devote my life towards like working towards a certain like idea, like that would it would certainly be along like the lines of kind of the sharing economy.
Okay, great. And I think I always knew that everybody has a different way of thinking, and that's something very unique. And this is the first time I'm talking to someone who thinks in that way. So that's great, Shaunak. And I don't want to waste any more time, but I think all of us would love to know and just talk to us about all the ventures that you've been part of, you've led. I think that's what everyone's waiting for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it dates back. The first thing I like kind of started off with was Utopia Pune, which I founded I think in 2014. I think it was around October, November, sometime around then. That was the first thing I tried. What that was essentially like the idea was like, the idea is pretty vague in the sense that like it's like if you think of it now, like it's like basically what an NGO does. But what we were trying to do was how do we make like the world a better place? I think that was like our tagline or like our catchphrase is like a door to a better society.
Yeah.
So we would basically like the way we would operate was we would like pick up projects and like kind of just like just devote ourselves to them. Like, and the thing was the projects itself, they were like very diverse. Like they were like completely all over the place. It would just be like if anyone in the core team or if any volunteer was like, you know what, this is a problem and like this is something I want to solve, or like this is something I want to work towards, like I and like the team I was working with would put together like a project and like kind of brainstorm like, how exactly we create this, like how exactly we put together a team, blah blah blah. So for example, like the stuff we did was like we did cleanliness drives, we did like petrol like consumption awareness, like basically we went to like traffic lights and we're like, switch off your engines like when there's a red light. I think one of my personal favorites was we would kind of collect unused paper from notebooks. They're like basically like if I have like a notebook in front of me and like the school year is done and like there are 20 pages left in it, like those 20 pages are going to go to waste, right? So instead what we would do is like we would like go around to people and like get those pages, and then we had a dedicated art team who knew how to like convert those into like a new notebook itself. And then we would distribute those notebooks to people in like underprivileged like communities. So like we were killing like multiple birds with one stone. I think like obviously giving underprivileged kids more access to stuff like notebooks and like stationery material. We were making sure we were recycling because we were using all this like extra waste paper. And it was like just like that was like my personal favorite project. But yeah, like that was that's Utopia Pune. I think I'm trying to remember when I officially closed it. Like obviously when I moved to the US, I stopped being involved, but I handed it down to another friend of mine, who I think continued it for a bit, but then it stopped.
Right.
But yeah, so that's Utopia Pune.
And what age did you start?
So I was 15 or 16.
Wow.
Let's see, this is 6 years ago. I'm 22 now, so so 16. Yeah, I was 16 when I started. So yeah, that was Utopia Pune. Followed by that was Utopia Model United Nations. That was so I think that's like an easier idea to explain. It's basically a UN conference. The driving like thesis behind that, or like the driving like thing was, that's when like MUNs were like on the rise rapidly in Pune. I think it was 2015. And So, and all the MUNs are like a very academically geared experience.
Absolutely.
We wanted to kind of change that and make that, more casual, more fun, and like more kind of memorable. We got a lot of like hate for that, like from like more established MUNs, because they were like, you're kind of violating what MUNs mean, and like what they're for. But sure, like honestly, like I operated that more like a business than like as something. Like for example, Utopia Pune was more so motivated by social good and like those kind of projects. Utopia MUN for me personally was more so a commercial enterprise. So so that's why like I didn't like feel that bad about that, in the sense like I personally did not think I was like violating like other MUNs or the core of MUN, because I thought I was like, creating more value. And like the proof was that people came and people enjoyed it, and like that was like what I was happy with at the end of the day. So that was Utopia MUN. First season was I think 2015, operated for 2 more years after that. We did 2016, 2017, and then so 2017 edition was after my freshman year at Penn. So I was like, okay, this is enough now. I can't continue to manage this from the United States. I need to kind of move on. Right? So I stopped that. So apart from that, there was also there were 3 more. So there was the Craftsman's Lair, which was founded in 15 or 16. The idea over there was, like you have a lot of these artists, or a lot of people who are enthusiastic about art in general, or like, are really good at like art and craft, like origami, or like making, I don't know, like posters and stuff like that. Like that's something I've always been absolutely shit at, but I would, I just like appreciate, other people do like a great job with it. So the idea was to kind of give them a platform to sell to people who might like their services, right? Like it's like, it was a very simple like idea of kind of like, now millions of these exist around the world, but basically like, and now I realize that what I was trying to create back then was a virtual marketplace centered around art. There's a company in the United States called Etsy, which does exactly that, and I found out about Etsy like years after the Craftsman's there. But honestly, that wasn't that successful. Operated that for like a few months. Stopped that. Then after that, I think College Conquest was founded, which was essentially a college counseling agency. We would work with students around India to kind of perfect the applications. I founded that with a friend who currently just graduated from Northwestern University, and the 2 of us like operated that for a bit. We counseled students like for a few years, and then we stopped that as well. And then the latest one was Sds Enterprises, which I founded after freshman year. Founded that with another friend from my old school, St. Mary's. And the thesis there, it's kind of actually a spin-off from the Craftsman's Lair in a way. Because we kind of took one element of that, and that's kind of making customized t-shirts and stuff. And we went to like, chains around like Pune, and we're like, you know what, like we will manufacture merchandise for you. Like you can sell this and make some more money. And that was the idea. I worked on that like my freshman summer, and then came back to the US, and like I still kind of accept contracts nowadays as well, like about like if people like we need customized t-shirts and like they contact me, like I know where to get it, I know how to ship it. So that's like kind of still operating, but not exactly. But I realized that was a long drawn answer to a simple question.
No, I think that's
the last thing that I talk about is so not exactly my own enterprise by any means, but over this past year I was president of Penn Masala, which is like the world's first South Asian alcohol group. And honestly, in a lot of ways, that was like it like reminded me of basically my entrepreneurial journey, because like the kind of like, thinking I would do, the kind of like people, like the way I would like deal with people and handle them was very similar and very reminiscent of like my time with entrepreneurship. So that was kind of like the last thing recently, and now just graduated. Hopefully can work on something again.
Amazing. I mean, that itself was so inspiring. It is very tough to do the public speaking, do take initiative at such a young age. So my next question was something on those lines. If someone is wanting to start or wanting to step into entrepreneurship, what is that one thing you would tell them? What is that?
Interesting. So the one thing I would tell people who step into entrepreneurship, I think, so there are a bunch. It's hard to pinpoint to one thing. I think a few key things to think about is, number one, build the right team. I think it's very important to find the right people to fill the right roles. in like the stuff that you do. Like for example, in Pune, like I had great teams across the board while working with, you know, like all of the things that I was involved in.
Right.
That was like that's a really important thing. Number two, don't be disheartened. You know, like you will have times where like you feel like, oh shit, this is not going to work, or like whatever, like, you know, like the strategy is like, you know, pivot and try again, you know, like you can keep doing it. But that being said, also, like, you know, with enough trial and error, if you realize that this is just like not an idea like worth pursuing, like know when to kind of, you know, hit the cord. And maybe like, those are just like two like important things that I would like tell people entering into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just to stop you there, Shaunak, guys, whoever's watching live, we are going to answer all the questions once we share conversation. So sit up and we'll take all the conversations. Thank you so much for keep them coming in. Shaunak, so one thing before we move on from all your ventures, what difficulties did you face? Obviously, you know, it is super difficult managing teams across different companies and operations and stuff like that. What difficulties were there, you know, which people can learn from actually?
Can you repeat that question? I think you cut out for a bit in the middle.
Okay, sorry. So my question was, you know, it is always difficult to manage a company, manage a team which you don't know in the start. What were the difficulties or what were the challenges that you faced while doing entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I think there is a challenge when you like, you know, assemble a new team and you like, you need them to work together, and like that's kind of what determines like the success of your venture, right? Like the biggest place I saw this was Human, right? Because like we would like operate on a very like year by year basis. Like, you know, the OC, or like the organizing committee we had in 2015 was different from the one we had in 2016, and which was different from the one we had in 2016. And the challenge is also that, you know, like some of the people like continued on with us, so that meant like you know, when you bring on new additions, like how do you make sure they don't feel left out, and how you know, you have like one team which is gelling better, and then you have other new people. So I think like one thing that I really emphasized on during like my time, especially with Utopia, I mean, because that's when I worked with the bigger team, was getting the team to, you know, like each other, know each other, meet each other, have fun with each other, right? Like, and I think like I like in the initial time, like, you know, when the new OC was assembled, like I would place a lot of emphasis on that up front, that, you know, I want you guys to like all become friends, like let's, you know, hang out together, let's like, but we need to all become best friends. And like it kind of culminated like by the end of each Human, like, you know, we'd say that, oh, you know, Human's a family, we're not just
absolutely.
I think that's important. I think as I said earlier, you need your team to be like just exceptionally like it needs to be a well-oiled machine. In terms of like, you know, other challenges, again, like I think a lot of it just comes down to like, you know, how you deal with conflict, how you like you know, how you set an example yourself. You don't want to be like the leader who slacks and the leader who can't pick up stuff. I think that was like the challenge is kind of, you know, like that, and also like, you know, like making sure like, you know, people don't feel like left out, and people don't feel like you're victimizing them, or like it's just like there's like a lot of like small social dynamics at play when you manage and I think that's something you learn through experience. So that was definitely just a couple of the challenges that I remember with my time.
Great. I think that was great, Shaunak. And I think I agree with you. For me, entrepreneurship is networking. You know, you meet people, you network with them, and you form a relationship which goes a long way most of the times. And that is a beautiful thing about starting a new venture, or starting entrepreneurship per se. So great. Thank you so much, Shaunak, for that. So another very quick question. What was the best piece of advice that you've received till now? From a mentor or someone, your teacher or whatever?
Interesting. Best piece of advice I've received ever?
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if this is exactly advice, but it's like something that my parents kind of, you know, drilled into me at a very young age. Like I think like that's like kind of advice. It's just like, you know, like just keep striving to like, you know, try to be the best at what you do. You know, like you don't have to do like something specific. Like you don't have to like, you know, like you don't like have to be an engineer, or you don't have to like, you know, win the physics Olympiad, but like whatever you do, try to be the best at it. I think like that was something that like pushed me a lot to like kind of keep going, and like, you know, keep trying to grow and keep trying to become like a better person, become better skilled at whatever I'm trying to do. And I think that was like really strong advice that, you don't have to like follow a certain path, but like whatever path you do follow, just like strive to be better at it every day.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Shaunak. That's great to hear. Right. So moving on to what you're doing right now, you said you're an investment banker. What what attracted you to pursue investment banking?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I think the biggest reason, honestly speaking, like being completely transparent, I got into investment banking was most Wharton students do it, and that kind of pushed me in that direction where, like, it's about the culture and it's about the atmosphere at your college. Like, for example, at my college, everyone was talking about it, and I was like, okay, what is this? If everyone loves it, maybe I'll love it. And obviously, like, I did my fair share of research, and like I thought I was like interested in the work, and I am interested in the work, because what an investment banker essentially does is I like to think of it as financial consulting to companies on transactions. Like it's like a multi-aspect definition, but basically, for example, like if you guys caught up on the news, Microsoft is possibly buying TikTok. So both of these sides, like Microsoft and ByteDance, the parent holding company of TikTok, they're both probably going to hire investment bankers to advise them on both sides of the process. Microsoft is going to get a banker to be like, all right, you can buy these guys at this price. This is how you structure the transaction. And someone's doing the same for ByteDance. So that's what an investment banker does. And I thought, that's pretty cool work if you think about it. Like, the ability to, so for example, my firm specifically, we do work with a lot of consumer retail companies and like a lot of consumer brands. So like think of, like healthy living brands or like apparel brands or like beauty brands, like, all of these guys, we advise them and we advise them on sale processes. So like basically if you're like a mid-sized company, you've been doing good and now you'll be like, all right, I want to sell my company. You will come to us and we will kind of help you find a buyer, we'll help you get a good price. So that's essentially what like investment banking is. And like I thought, this is exciting. And my industry as well, like as I said, I'm working with consumer. I've always been really excited about and interested by consumer. And so, like those are the kind of things that drew me into it.
Great. And I think you said that, you came to Wharton, everyone was doing that, and that's what you're ending up doing now. So I really feel that university really drives what you end up doing. And, again, eduMates, that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to connect students to make sure that, what they understand what society is or what culture that university has before they make that choice. So thank you so much. I think that's a really important point, an important takeaway to take, that universities really drive what you do in life.
Absolutely. Yep. I definitely subscribe to that idea. I think universities like absolutely make your decision for you in some ways.
Great. I think that's great, Shaunak. So how would you encourage, obviously you said that your parents encouraged you to do whatever you wanted to, right? How do you think you can encourage someone to pursue what they really want to? What do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I think like it's something also that I've given a lot of thought to in the past few years. I think despite of that advice that my parents gave me, I think in general I was always very attracted to like what looks the best, or like what do I have to do? What's the most like glamorous? So like what's like in the sense that like for Indian students, a lot of that is probably comes down to like IITs or like, that's where like everyone wants to do. Like, so I was like, what does everyone want to do and like, how do I do it? Right. And that carried on into college as well. Like, as I said right now, like, one of the big reasons why I got into investment banking was because what does everyone want to do and how can I do it? Right. Like that was the same thought process that took me over there. So in that sense, I think the advice that I would give to people is don't fall into that trap. When you're thinking of going into a certain direction or a certain career, like something you want to do, think about why you want to do it. There's something that I heard a lot like growing up from people around me is that you want a job that will keep you happy, not just a job that you earn the most money at. But now I realize how important that is. Growing up, I thought I was like, what, screw that, I want as much money as I can, that's my goal. Now I realize that it's so much like there's so much more to it than just like the financial aspect. You actually do need to find something that you feel like, wow, I'm excited about this, and this is something I can do like every day, or like this is something I can't get tired about, or like you can't just like follow something because of that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
I think the big advice I'd give to people is, like whenever you make a decision, think about why you want to do certain things. If it's because everyone else is doing it, think more. If it's because I actually enjoy this and this is amazing and this is giving me happiness, go ahead and do it.
Absolutely. That's great, Shaunak. I think there's a lot to take away from that answer. Thank you so much for that. So obviously we are all in quarantine right now. A lot of my mentors, a lot of people who have done a lot of things in entrepreneurship have said that this is the best time to, start a business or start learning a new skill. What do you think about that? How should someone start using the best time of this quarantine?
No, absolutely. So I think I actually posted on LinkedIn about this around a month or two ago. I personally have my according to me, this is one of the best times possible for entrepreneurs in general, right?
Right.
There are a bunch of reasons to this, right? Number one is time, right? Everyone as a result of work from home, as a result of people getting time off, blah blah blah, not traveling, everyone's saving so much time. And time is kind of the one of the two bread and butters for entrepreneurs, right? You need time to work on your venture, ideate, think about stuff. So that's number one. Number two is what this situation has done very interestingly is it's given a host of new problems or new challenges to the world, right? And another very common phrase in entrepreneurship is that your company should look to solve a problem. Right? It's a very common phrase. It's something that you've probably heard. Everyone over here has probably heard that, you should look to solve a problem with your ventures.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is now all of a sudden there are hundreds of new problems in the world, right?
Absolutely.
All of a sudden companies need to adapt to work from home, which is why you see a lot of, enterprise companies just booming, right? On the other hand, you also have that since everyone's going online away from in-person interactions, cybersecurity is now a big concern that companies have, and as a result, you see those companies booming. In the consumer space, you have direct to retail was already kind of having its bad time, but now direct to consumer and online marketplaces, all of a sudden everyone wants a piece of that, right? So there's so many new challenges that have been created that I think it's very exciting to be an entrepreneur right now.
Right.
So in that vein, I think entrepreneurship is as a result of the pandemic, I think if you want to be an entrepreneur right now, I think a good way to start is thinking that what's different now? What are the new challenges in the new world, and how can I fix them? That's a good way to think. In terms of skills, I think it's definitely a good time to pick up some new skills. I personally tried a few Python courses. I'm kind of learning computer science on the side, learning some other SQL and A/B testing on the side as well. I think it's a good time to pick up skills. In terms of what skills are right to pick up, I don't think there's exactly a right answer to that. It's very dependent on your situation. It's dependent on what you already know, and it's dependent on what you want to know. But I will say, I think right now, I feel any kind of technical skill set is great. Be it coding, computer science, be it or also just analytical skill set, statistics, all of that kind of stuff is important right now. So I think if I had to recommend skills to pick up, that's what I would recommend.
Okay, great. I think that answers a lot of questions, Shaunak. Thank you so much for that. I think before we move on to the questions the audience has, I have one last question for you. If you had to explain in one sentence, if you had to give a piece of advice to all the upcoming entrepreneurs and future thought leaders, what would that one line be?
One piece of advice. Interesting. I think again boils down to the same this thing I said at the start. How do you create value in this world? Right. That's the one question that I would ask an entrepreneur. Who for example, if someone comes to me with a business idea, I'd be who are you creating value for? How are you capturing value from them as well? So that's kind of the central thing that you should think about when if you're going on a new venture or you're evaluating a venture.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Shaunak. That was a very insightful conversation, and I myself learned so many things. So let's just quickly dive into some of the questions the audience has. Give me 1 second. Right. So I have a question from Vinny here. He says, "It's the most exciting time to be an entrepreneur. It becomes difficult at these times to get into entrepreneurship and stuff like that. How do you think eduMates now that we are trying to solve the problem of students, how big of a problem do you think eduMates is solving?
No, I think it's great. Like as I said, like why I like what you guys are doing so much is as we talked about, like I think the university or like the college someone goes to has a massive role in deciding, like in basically shaping your life and shaping your career trajectory. So I think like the value you guys are creating is basically putting, like helping people, like helping put students on like a career track that they will enjoy and they will like actually like lead to happy lives. That's the kind of value you guys are creating. And that's why I like what eduMates is doing right now. So
All right, great. Thank you so much, Shaunak, for that. I'm just gonna give me 1 minute. Let's read through the questions.
Yes, sift through the questions.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I have a question. I have a question from Varad. He says, does being well versed with finance and entrepreneurship prove to be helpful for fields such as data science and econometrics?
Interesting. It's funny because I've never heard that question asked, but I've heard the reverse asked. That is being well versed in data analytics helpful in finance and entrepreneurship. So my opinion is that, like, number one, like, coming to entrepreneurship, like, I don't think that's like you can't be well versed in entrepreneurship, right? Like, sure, like you can like study business models and you can understand that, but like that's like something you will do if you're starting a new venture, right? That's entrepreneurship is not a skill set by itself. Finance, on the other hand, sure, it's a skill set, right? Like understanding, like the financials of companies, like understanding how like money works, cash works, blah blah blah, all of that stuff. So it's a skill set that, in terms of how it affects data analytics, I personally don't know how directly it would affect like data analytics as a whole. I'm like, if like, thinking about it right now, probably not that much. I think because the data you're dealing with in data analytics is more so probably like customer centric or like, like just, I mean, data can be anything, but like,
absolutely,
obviously if you're dealing with like financial data, sure, it would be helpful to be well versed with that. But I personally don't think beyond that, it's like that massive of value add if you're looking at career in data analytics. But I think that the reverse is true for sure. I think data analytics in general is so useful to have in finance or in entrepreneurship. Like data is like data is a new currency, like data is the new oil, as people say. And knowing how to kind of work with data and knowing how to analyze data is like a skill that's just like valuable anywhere now.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I hope, Farad, I think he answered your question. Great. So moving on to the next question, I have a question from Dehul. He's saying, did you run into any issues or road bumps in the process of applying to universities abroad?
I don't have issues and road bumps. I think like obviously like it's a very like black and white outcome, right? Like you apply and you either get in or not. So I mean, sure, like, there were times that were demoralizing and I was like, oh man, I want to be done writing essays. Like, this is so frustrating. Like it's a task of mental strength. This is the same, like, it's the same as preparing for like a competitive exam, like the JEE or something, right? Like it's a stressful process. It's a long process. You need to work really hard. So in that sense, like, sure, like I had like times of, emotional, like, all right, come on, like I need to get through this. Like, this is so annoying. But I luckily had a good support system around me. My parents and my family were obviously really helpful, and like so I don't think like any major like roadblocks as such, but like definitely like emotional challenges.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shaunak. So Shaunak, I think I have a question from Aditya. He's from Orchid, which is great. His question is, my question is that when you want to start out something that is given less importance in a country like India, such as the aerospace industry, or which is least valued industry in India, how do you start up with a company which could be as large as something like the SpaceX or Boeing or something like that? How would you set up a base for such an idea? Which is a lovely question, Aditya.
Interesting. That's an interesting question. Well, it's a question that I don't have the best or right answer to. Otherwise, I would have done that myself in India and maybe like SpaceX and Boeing. But like I think the reason why like basically you need to think about what is like why some industries function better in one country versus the other, right? You need to drill deep and like think about why it might happen. Like, for example, like I personally think that the industries that you kind of talked about are like more like capital intensive manufacturing heavy industries in India are going to boom, right? Because number one, like there's so many people, right, in India. There's
absolutely.
people looking for cheaper labor, easier costs. In India is a great place to do it. And the number two and probably the more pressing issue right now is that people are losing their trust in China as a result of just everything that's going on. As a result of in the US, the Trump administration is very has a very anti-China a stance of kind of pushing that off. So where do you go to next? You go to India, right? And I think I forgot, I read in the news, but a few companies are already moving manufacturing facilities. I think Apple, honestly, I'm not sure. I think Apple in Chennai or something, they have a new plant. But anyways, I'm losing track from the question itself. In terms of how you create a company in an industry that's not that pervasive in the country, it's tough. I think you need to see whether this, as coming back to what I was talking about earlier, whether that industry is actually conducive in a country like India. If it is, how do you create value over there? Who are the people you engage, who are the customers you have, and then after that, how do you get the right funding to do it, right? Especially in if you're talking about companies like SpaceX and Boeing that are so capital intensive, you need an enormous amount of money, right? Where are you going to get that money? There's venture capital sources, there's other financing. Again, it's tougher because in such a capital intensive industry, venture capitalists are generally kind of I'm not sure if I want to do it because I have to put in so much money in front. Again, like I said, interesting question, one that honestly I don't have the right answer to. But Aditya, if you ever find out, let me know and let's work on something together.
Absolutely, that was a great question, Aditya. Great. So I think we'll take a couple of last questions. So Atharva is saying, do you advise going for students going abroad for education, especially post-COVID?
Can you repeat that? I think you cut off again.
So, all right. So do you advise students to go abroad for further studies, especially, post-COVID times?
It's tough, right? I personally, I'm a huge fan of the American education system, or in general, going abroad. So pre-COVID, I would 100% my recommendation is you need to come to the US unless you're doing engineering, in which case there are great universities in India that are equipped to do this. Honestly, I feel whatever we're seeing right now, be it through both in terms of COVID and in terms of I know there are a lot of administrative concerns of the Trump administration being our visa gonna be canceled, blah blah blah. There's concern over there. I think these are kind of short-term blips. I personally think they're not gonna stick around in the next 5-10 years. So look, if you come to college right now, if you're applying right now, you're gonna be out of college in 5 years from now, right? At which point I think sure, it's still going to be it's going to be a completely different world than what we have right now. So my recommendation is still that come to the United States. I'm a huge fan of the education system here and the opportunity it provides you. And jobs pay well. You will kind of get a return on your investment soon enough. My recommendation, just to summarize that, I would still recommend students strongly consider and probably come to the United States as an option to study.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shaunak. So I'll take one last question, guys, and feel free to, get in touch with Shaunak and ask whatever questions you guys have. But we'll take one last question from Ayush. He says, do you have any recommendations for any specific financial skills or programs for entrepreneurs to learn? Skills that can help create value in a startup.
Interesting. So not exactly a financial skill, but a skill that all financial analysts use is Excel. Be proficient with it. I think Excel is one of the most powerful softwares ever built, and an extremely useful tool to do a lot of stuff with. So that is definitely just a kind of a tangible action-based skill set that I recommend that people have. In terms of financial knowledge, I think just understanding the basics, costs, revenues, margins, because the reason why those are important for entrepreneurs especially is that when you pitch to companies like venture capitalists or other sources of funding, they want to know that the numbers behind your business, right? And the numbers driving your business are all these these revenue figures or your margin figure, your annualized run rate, all these kind of names and terms that you throw around. They want to know that you know that. So I think building a fundamental knowledge of basically like how different cogs work in like a company's financials, I think is like important. Beyond that, like knowing about like how a market trades or like all that stuff, like obviously like it's great, but if you're looking specifically to as to like how entrepreneurs can use finance, I think like it's more so important to get like the corporate finance, like the company financials part of it.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you, Shaunak. Ayush, I hope he answered your question. Great. So before we end, I would first like to thank each and every one of you who have joined us live, and you've asked amazing questions. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to have another webinar next weekend with a new guest. So please, just follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're going to be posting a lot of updates there. And thank you so much. And, lastly, but most importantly, Shaunak, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you. So I really appreciate the time you gave this, and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks everyone for attending. If you have any other questions, or if you want to get in touch, like all the social media forms are there, like shoot me a message. But yeah, great. Thanks for having me again, eduMates, and hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.